tell you about that night.
You can't do this! What just happened?
It's like you're afraid if I don't do everything perfectly, you're gonna lose me.
Welcome everyone, this is episode 32 of the Comics in Motion podcast. I am, as always, Chris Phelps, and my co-host and good friend is Mr. Dave Horrocks.
Hi Chris, and hi guys. Welcome to the Comics in Motion podcast. What we like to do here is we like to review media like movies, TV shows and games that are based on comic books. Myself, I'll be reviewing the media from the perspective of a long-time comic book fan, and Chris will be reviewing the media mainly from that media perspective, and we'll walk through our given topic of the week and meet together somewhere in the middle and give our thoughts on it. What we also like to do is we also like to spoil everything. So if you haven't watched our choice of the week, then I advise you to hit that pause button and come back later when you've read it. Read it? When you've watched it. If you want to read the comics as well, that would be lovely. But more often than not, it's going to be watched it. So, Chris, we had a bonus episode this last week, and it's gone down quite well. It looks like it's got more downloads than our other episode that we released last week.
Now, Dave, it's got to be said, though, David Hine, what a great guy. And obviously, you give me the backstory on him, because I'm obviously not knowing who he is, but not only was it a great interview, he's a really good, nice guy as well. It was like finding out the backstory of what he does was great. And I think that's probably where people have grabbed onto as well, because he's such a respected name within the comic book world. And I'm saying this only because of what you've, shown me and put me onto and read about him. But yeah, really, really good episode. I think we've done some great interviews, but I've got to say, I think at the moment that's up there with one of my best, just for the sheer knowledge of the insider stuff of his writing and stuff. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it was very candid as well, wasn't it? About some of the challenges that are out there. And I have to say, so since we recorded that, I had read District X years ago before I really started looking out for, well, who's drawing this, who's writing this, and so I've gone back to District X since, and it's actually a great read.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I'd really recommend picking that one up. And again, it's not. Trouble is with anyone who's not steeped in X-Men lore, it's so difficult to pick up those books now, whereas this was all new characters, and so it really starts from the beginning in this kind of, in what they call Mutant Town, so it's like a ghetto, so there's a lot of parallels between kind of ghettos that we know in the real world, and these kind of mutants are all discriminated against and oppressed by the law even. So yeah, really good read.
No, good stuff. Now, obviously, we've had all sorts going on this week, Dave. We've had the launch of a competition as well, haven't we? Which we're running for a couple of weeks with all our fans.
That's right. So sponsored by Studio. So they'd agreed to send the winner of the said competition a pair of kind of premium Bluetooth headphones. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. And again, everything's going more and more wireless, isn't it now? And I think it's a little bit like, before I had air conditioning in my car, I thought, well, I've got a window. Why do I need air conditioning? And I must admit, thinking about the Bluetooth headphones, I think, well, it's not that big a deal having the wire. But after you've got used to them, you can't go back to the wires, I don't think. So no, it's great. And so all you have to do to enter that competition is pop over to iTunes, drop us a review on iTunes, preferably a 5-star one. That just helps us grow the show. We'll pick a winner at random, and we'll get in touch with you to see where to send it to.
Yeah. That's great. And also, if you do like the look of the products on the Studio website, which is www.studio.com, you do get a 15% discount as well off your order, which is Comics in Motion Podcast 15. So Comics in Motion podcast 15 gets you 15% off any orders on the website. So you can't go wrong. If you don't win the competition, you've got no excuse not to get on there and buy some of their great products.
Yep, and it's 15 the number, so it's 15, not 15 spelled out in words. So, yep, absolutely fantastic. And speaking of 5-star reviews, so we've got some to read out this week, Chris.
Oh, nice. Go for it, Dave.
So I'll start off with the first one. So it says, insanely likable. Such a good podcast. Comic culture explained without being exclusively nerdy. Brilliant hosts. I think I could have edited that bit. No, it genuinely does. It says brilliant hosts who have already had a couple of great guests on. This show deserves to stand out and is genuinely entertaining and informative. Love the theme tune too.
Oh, that's good.
That's good. Yeah, thanks for that. We kind of like the theme tune as well.
I think you got to take full credit for that one, Dave, because you picked that one out, didn't you? So
we chose it together. I think I was quite passionate that we went with this one, though.
Yeah, no, I love the tune. I love the music, the bass beat drops that you throw in there when we're mixing it and stuff. So yeah. Nice. Well, what the other review then, Dave?
So going across to the US, we have this podcast is a ton of fun. Thanks to this podcast, I now know what Beano is.
I'm taking full credit for that.
I think, yeah, you keep every person we interview, you're trying to push it on them, and we keep mentioning The Office, Ricky Gervais, and the Beano and the Dandy, don't we? So,
Yeah.
So we should. I'm sure there was a Dennis the Menace movie, wasn't there? So. You know, we could always review that one at some point, couldn't we?
I think I've seen it. I think even I, as the Beano fan, for being a kid who champions it to anyone we speak to, even I think we might be stretching it. That's
why I was kind of pausing. It's like, you know, I'd also, you know, I could stick a fork in my eye. It's not necessarily that I want to do it, you know, and
no.
It's going to be painful. So, but let's see. I think we've got plenty of other stuff to work through before we get there. But it does kind of seem we should do it, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. And obviously we've got David Hine on the case trying to get us a copy of a Ricky Gervais panel, as in Davy Brent. So as soon as we see 2 pictures of him in a comic book situation, we're reviewing The Office. all 3 series, or 2 series in Christmas specials and the movie all in one, Dave.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so David had mentioned, hadn't he, last week, that one of his friends was the artist for Flanimals, which was written by Ricky Gervais. And so, you know, there is a kind of, you know, there is a tenuous link there.
Yeah.
But it'd be even better if he could, obviously, just write a Ricky Gervais comic. But
yeah,
I'm not sure. He was being very polite when you were pushing that one.
Yeah, I think. If we could see his facial expressions. Yeah, Chris, of course we will. Yeah. No, but it was good.
I did follow up on it after, and I think he's referring to a chap called Rob Steen.
Yeah.
Who's his artist on Strange Embrace, I believe. So, you know, that's our tenuous link where we could get away with it. But yeah, let's see if something a bit more tangible comes up.
Now, Dave, what are we reviewing this week for everyone?
So we had our second competition, didn't we? Well, not a real competition, a poll.
Yeah.
So we'd made our theme, you know, TV shows that have come out in 2018, and we had 4 options. We had Cloak and Dagger, we had Krypton, we had Black Lightning, and The Runaways. And I think Krypton shot to the front a little bit like Conan. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, you're probably wondering why I think Conan's a sprinter, but go back and listen to that poll maybe. And then at the death, Cloak and Dagger just came from nowhere and stole in there, which I know you were a bit disappointed about.
Yeah, just a little. As a Superman out-and-out fanboy, yeah, I was absolutely gutted. But yeah, it will be something we're going to review hopefully soon.
Yeah, so We should absolutely go through Krypton. I know it's been out in the US for a while, but it's just literally coming out on UK TV now, isn't it? So we'll
Yes.
go through that. We'll probably give it a few weeks so that we don't spoil everything. But yeah, we should do it soon.
Definitely.
So should we go into a bit of comics background then? Because I'm
course.
guessing you're not really that familiar with these guys.
No, yeah, I'm going to say something then. No, I'm not. I was going to say, it may ruin the whole show, Dave.
All right, fair enough.
Go for it, mate.
So Cloak and Dagger were created by Bill Mantlo and artist Ed Hannigan, and they basically made their first appearance in issue 64 of Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man back in '82. Now, they appeared quite a few times in and around Spider-Man. They weren't quite sidekicks, but they'd appear in his books. And it wasn't until the year after, so '83, where they basically had their own mini-series, which was self-titled. Now, later in '85, they had their own bi-monthly book, but after issue 11, they decided to combine Cloak and Dagger and Doctor Strange and revive that Strange Tales title, which ran for about 19 issues, and then they split them up again. So when they split them up again, so they retitled this The Mutant Adventures of Cloak and Dagger, and that run for about 19 issues and then was cancelled. So since the early '80s, they've kind of gone up and down in popularity, and since that second run, they've appeared in other books. They've had their own title again, but they've never really hit the front and been that real A-list couple of characters. Now, for me personally, I loved these guys back in the early '80s, and I think it just coincided, with me kind of having read a lot of Spider-Man and knowing of Superman, loving the movie and whatever, Batman, all those, as far as I was concerned, from my frame of reference, those classic superheroes. And then these were younger, they were a bit more grounded, so they weren't running around trying to fight Dr. Octopus or the Rhino or anything. They were dealing with more kind of street level drugs problems. And so they didn't have these costumed villains to fight. It was much more, I was going to say much more gangster, but much more grounded than that. But they've never really capitalized on that initial popularity back in the '80s. And so I think now they've probably been a little bit superseded. They do pop up every now and then, but The Runaways was a much more recent book, and I think that's probably been a bit more popular and probably superseded them in a lot of respects. Now, what I'll mention from the comics, there was a little bit of ambiguity for a while, right up until this last decade, pretty much, because in the comics they basically get their powers because they're runaways essentially, and they take these experimental drugs. So there's these kind of bad guys. If you've seen Luke Cage, similar-ish idea, and they've got these experimental drugs, and then they get their powers. And it's much less stretched out than this TV show is. But the question was, well, did the drugs give them the powers, or were they actually mutants? And then the drugs were just kind of a catalyst that just woke up their powers. And in the last decade, that question was answered because they were temporarily in the kind of what was known as the Dark X-Men, and basically after that whole phase, they had a test and they were found, they didn't have the X gene. But again, they kind of appear in and around that X-Men universe a lot as well. Another big difference between the TV show, so like a lot of the superheroes, they're based in New York, whereas here we're obviously based somewhere else, aren't we? So yeah, I think that's it for comics background.
Right, regarding the TV stuff, Dave, or the information, it's set within the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was a franchise born around 2011 with ABC Studios, Marvel Television, and Wandering Rocks Productions, with Joe Perkowski serving as like the showrunner director, just basically the guy who spearheaded the whole project. They cast Olivia Holt and Aubrey Joseph as Cloak and Dagger, or Dagger and Cloak, if you put them in that order. So they cast Olivia Holt and Aubrey Joseph. Olivia plays Dagger and Aubrey plays Cloak. That's around 2016. And then Perkowski announced that they were both cast in January 2017 and that they were moving the filming to New Orleans because of the Marvel's Defenders in the MCU, because that's all based around New York, because there was going to be some sort of crossover somewhere, which they couldn't really explain. So they just totally went against where the comics from and everything. They just moved all the production to New Orleans. So there was no tie-in. Like I sort of was thinking as well, which is quite interesting because the Defenders is a Netflix MCU production, whereas this one wasn't. We've seen it on Amazon, haven't we, over here? So I don't know how you would have tied that in anyway. But I know we've had like the X-Men and stuff like that I never mentioned in the Avengers, but now they will be because of the rights with Disney and stuff buying Fox out and that. So I want to see how that one plays out. One of the things that I found interesting was Perkowski was saying that he wanted it to run over like 100 episodes. So the relationship between Cloak and Dagger it's going to be like a romantic relationship, as you know, for the comics, but he was going to build it over time. Now, I think that's a slight mistake, knowing how brutal and culling the US TV shows getting cancelled are. So it may never, I'm not saying it won't, because it's actually been renewed for a second season, but I'm not sure whether you're actually going to see that romantic connection the way these things go on. And being a fan of Smallville, how long they dragged that out with Clark and Lois and Clark and Lana, they were lucky because it kept getting renewed because it was so well received. So we'll see how that pans out, but that does lead me on to how well it was received, which I find really surprising. That on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a review aggregate of 90% approval, which I find absolutely unbelievable, with an average review rating of 7.7 off 41 reviews. Now, Dave, that's unheard of, really, I think, as well, at the moment, of any show. I think Game of Thrones is probably one of the only ones that's pretty close. And then the critical consensus is that it was a success. And I got a little quote here. It says, one of the reviewers, Cloak and Dagger blends soapy drama with superhero grit to create an exciting, surprisingly thoughtful addition to the genre, even if it falls prey to certain amount of narrative bloat, which I think is quite a fair assessment. Metacritic, which uses user averages, they've got a 68%, which is really good. That's a really good score out of 100, and it's favourable reviews. So straight away, it was renewed for a second season without a doubt. Now, viewership, in the first episode in the US, it just scored under 1 million viewers, which, isn't great. It's not going to, break the walls down. But across the first weekend, it had over 7 million views, whether that was digitally, online, streaming. So it was an absolute success. It was a no-brainer. And one of the main things it had was it was an actual social media success. The engagement across Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr had 112,000 engagement, which is absolutely fantastic. So without a doubt, I think it was already going to be renewed after the first weekend. Olivia Holt, who obviously plays Dagger, she won a Teen Choice Award this year for portraying that role. And then she was nominated for 2 other roles. And the show was actually nominated for Best Show in the Teen Choice Award, but didn't actually win that. So critically and everything, it's been a complete success. There is stuff I will mention in the review, but as Del Boy would say, Dave, what don't speak, don't lie. So it was very well received. And like I say, July 2018, they've just started production of the second series. So we should see that pretty soon. And I think that's it, Dave.
Very good, very good. So I think some really interesting stats there.
Yeah.
And I think as we go through our review, we'll find maybe that we're not completely aligned with that. But there's a telltale, isn't there? And I didn't know about these awards and stuff until you've just told me. So the fact that they won like the Teen Choice Awards and all this, or were nominated, this series is not for us, is it?
No.
This is not pitched for us. This is pitched for a quite younger audience, I think. And so that is, that's just the reality. So we're going to be looking at it, as a couple of older blokes.
Dave, you're older than me, but
not putting too fine a point on it, but maybe that younger demographic. I can see why some people might like that.
Yeah. I've got a few things to say about them. I like to say we'll get into that in the review. You're right.
So before we go into our review, though, do we want to say a couple of words about our sponsor?
Of course. Today's episode, again, as Dave mentioned earlier, is sponsored by Studio. fantastic technology and a headset specialist over in Sweden. Now, we are doing a competition. I did mention it before. One thing regarding the competition, Dave, we should have mentioned before, it's only open to UK listeners at the moment. Studio are going to send off the winner of the headset. You guys actually pick which one you want. There's no limit on which headset you want on their website, and then I'll get that off to you. But what we need you to do is get on iTunes and give us some reviews of the show, preferably 5-star, but be as honest and as, thing as you want to be. We respect any review out there. And also it helps us grow as well, Dave, which is really good. So, and also if you don't find it on iTunes, you might find it on a website, a pod hosting site called Podbean as well. They do reviews and very similar to iTunes. Put a review on there. We'll see all of them. And also, Dave, as you know, we will get a discount of 15% on orders. So if you type in Comics in Motion Podcast 15, as in the number 15 at the end, you will get 15% off all orders.
That's great. And I really do encourage you to go and have a look there as well. There's all kinds of different styles. So if you prefer the in-ear earphones or the over-ear, the kind of bigger earphones, there's also the tiny earphones where you can barely tell someone's got them in. All sorts of different styles there to have a look at, but they're all across the board. They just look great. And so, thanks again to Studio for sponsoring us and giving the opportunity to one of our listeners to get a free pair, and offering our listeners that discount as well.
Good stuff, Dave. So are you ready to rock and roll with the review?
I think we are. Let's go for it. Okay, so we start off at the beginning. So we start off with a young Tandy Bowen, don't we? And she's being picked up by a father, Nathan, and straight away there's lots of little clues in here. So she's doing a little ballet practice, whatever you call them. I assume it's just practice, isn't it? It's a recital if you're doing it for loads of people. But anyway, wrong details. I'm going all Lewis there, aren't I? So she actually gets let down, doesn't she? She gets left. And then she calls her dad, who's obviously, he's on his way to work by the looks of it. And I kind of think that we see later in the series that the mother is not she's not going to win Mum of the Year, is she?
No.
And you just wonder what's going on there. Why exactly was she left high and dry? I don't think it was by accident that they put that in there. So I thought that was interesting. Did the mother have some issues actually, even going back to then? But anyway, so the dad comes and picks her up, and he's driving on his way to work, and he's clearly on a conference call, not really concentrating on the road. And he's telling whoever's on the other end of the call, we don't know at this point, that if Roxxon cut all these corners, bad things are going to happen. I don't know if did they name Roxxon here? I'm not sure, but that's who it is.
Yeah.
And so and Tandy's kind of in the back, and just kind of passively absorbing all of this that's going around there. And then essentially we head across, don't we, to Tyrone, and you can see he's the little brother, about the same age, and he really looks up to his older brother Billy. And you can see they're in this quandary where they're gonna steal this car stereo, this car stereo, car radio, and he doesn't really want to do it, and basically Tyrone takes it upon himself. He doesn't want Billy to come across weak. I think that's the way I interpreted it to his mate. So he thinks he's going to do his big brother a favor, and he's going to steal the car stereo himself.
Yeah.
But then we kind of get the we're ramping up now to the explosion. So all the bad things that Nathan, Tandy's father, was talking about, it's coming to fruition, and we can see just off on the waterline, this rig is going to blow, and then Nathan ends up crashing into the ocean. The father, we assume has died at this point. Meanwhile, I guess it's probably just before that, isn't it, where the police are chasing down Billy and Tyrone, because they've suspected them of this car radio theft, which they were going to. Billy was actually going to put it back, and it ends up, because of that explosion, you could say, if the explosion didn't happen, would the next event happen? But I'm not sure. But he ends up shooting Billy, and then essentially we get the explosion, and then what? I said I can't hardly remember this.
No, yes.
What
we get the
happens?
explosion, and then
yeah, I'll finish it off there. And so we get this explosion, and Chris.
Yeah, and then obviously from the explosion, the water's all sort of polluted, and you've got Billy is in there, Tyrone jumps in, and then Tandy is in the water as well. Obviously, all different stages of this sort of interaction, which all happens in real time. And I must admit, Dave, I'm watching this, and I agree with what you said before we get into the review. As a big Smallville fan, and something that was mainly an E4 type, in the UK, E4 is sort of your teen type channel, isn't it? You might be like a late teens at mid-20s, maybe even 30 if you can scrape it. And I was a massive fan of Smallville because of Superman, because of the backstory, everything. And yeah, there's a few episodes where you're like, yeah, it is a bit, Nickelodeon type, BBC Children's Channel episodes. But then you've got some other cracking bits as well where you're like, oh, I'm all in on this because of the characters or the different things. I knew straight away within this first 15, 20 minutes, I'm thinking, I feel old, because it's based around, obviously, the teens, and you've got Tyrone and Tandy. But I don't know. I couldn't understand what was going on. And I'm watching it because obviously, it doesn't matter if you don't know the characters in the comics, because I certainly don't. Obviously, as everybody knows, that's not my thing. But I had no prior knowledge of ever seeing these on TV. As you've mentioned, they've never really been on anything, if anything at all, I've ever seen. And I couldn't work out what was going on. And we had a bit, like you say, they're under the water. We get this thing where the energy force just goes through the water, and then we get Tandy and Tyrone both end up holding hands, don't they? And sort of unconscious within the water when they should be drowning. But basically, there's this connection with the hands, isn't there? And that sets up for 8 years later. But I just kept thinking, it's a bit weak, this, And I must admit, you have but you've sort of answered my questions in my head, because it's not really, this isn't how it happens in the comics, is it?
No, that's right. I mean,
as you said, it was an experiment, was it?
Yeah. So they basically, they're runaways, and they get caught up in these, experimental drugs. And they get their powers that way. So this is new for the TV show.
Yeah, I mean, there's no harm in that, because obviously we know they've moved cities and that, as I mentioned before. But then you go 8 years later, and Tandy's a bit like a petty thief, isn't she? She's a bit of a Robin Hood. She's stealing from the rich. And Mum's got this lawyer who's obviously got some case against Roxxon as well. And I don't know whether that was explained very well, if I'm being honest, Dave. I kept sitting there thinking, I'm going to have to go back. I don't understand what's going on. The stepping and pacing, I thought, was a bit off in his first episode. And then we get a party, and Tandy's there doing her thing, and she bumps into Tyrone, doesn't she? And they have an interaction where Tyrone chases, doesn't she steal something off him? And they end up in like a graveyard, and he grabs hold of it. As they grab, all the hands touch, and they just both sort of explode back, realise something's going on. They don't know what's happened, but there's some connection there. And again, I thought that was a bit weak. Of all the coincidences, she's there with him. I don't know. It was a bit.
Well, I don't think it was the strongest, again, from my perspective. What I would say is they played around with a few things here. So in the comic, Tandy is the one who's got more of a privileged upbringing, and Tyrone's the one from the wrong side of the tracks kind of thing. And they're playing, aren't they, with this, two sides of the same coin type of idea. So all the way through the episodes, you see that different yin and yang type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think, this bit, it's almost like they're playing with the comic fans, because the way it starts off, before she goes to rob that bloke, it looks like she's doing quite well for herself.
Yeah.
Whereas actually she's homeless, isn't she? She's not doing very well at all. And I think, well, is Cloak and Dagger really that well known? Do they have to mess with us? I don't know. If it was or not, but certainly, yeah, she's not very she's not, I'm not going to say redeemable, but she's not a very likable person, is she, at this stage?
No. And you're getting that sort of, as a point of reference, Dave, I know it sounds daft, but you're getting that sort of, a bit like a watered down Selena Kyle, the old Catwoman sort of thing in The Dark Knight. She's very much playing that character in Anne Hathaway. It's that sort of nasty survival type character. She's not totally nasty, but she's doing enough where she has no conscience of robbing from somebody or, steal, whatever. And she does play it like that, but I agree with you. There was just something I don't know. I don't know if it's likable or convincing. I couldn't work out what was going on. And I don't know whether it's because we're a bit older, you're thinking, I just kept thinking, this isn't my thing at all. I just couldn't work out what was going on. I keep saying that, what was going on, but I don't know. It just hit off with me slightly, all this stuff. And it was too convenient. Again, I don't know whether that's because we're reviewing all the time. I'm you're seeing more things now, plot holes that I probably would have even questioned maybe 12 months ago. You know what I mean? But now that we're really sitting down and analysing what we're watching and stuff, and not that we're experts in show writing or directing, because we're far from that. But as a fan, I don't know. She was just a weird character at this point. And then one thing I would say, Dave, the next scene is very powerful. And it's quite disturbing because I don't know how old she's supposed to be, but we get this situation where she's assaulted by this guy, Rick, isn't she? And he basically tries to rape her, which I was thinking, oh, this is a bit too strong, because I'm sure, is she supposed to be underage? Because that's what I kept thinking.
I'd have to say, doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter how old she is. It's a very, very uncomfortable scene. And I think up until this point, the tone of the show, it does let you know it's kind of a teeny show. That's not to say people, who are a bit older can't enjoy it as well. I'm sure there are people who do. But with that tone, this scene of the whole attempted rape thing, it really resonated with me, and we've both got daughters, haven't we? It's just very uncomfortable. But yeah, she actually, that's when she discovers. I think basically with Tyrone and Tandy kind of connecting in that way, this has kick-started their powers essentially, and so she has this light dagger and sticks it in him, and runs off. So she's not kind of sure what's going on, and she thinks, well, she might have killed this bloke. Meanwhile, Tyrone, he goes off to bed and covers himself in a sheet, and ends up with the detective who shot his brother, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's looking round, isn't he, for him, and that he sees him loading his car up and stuff, doesn't he? I don't know. That I couldn't work out how he got the sheet or anything, because is it explained? Because it's gone over my head completely how this just came about, this teleporting thing. I sat there thinking, this has just totally gone to the far left as far as I was concerned, and I'm thinking I must have missed something. I've totally not been paying attention to what's going on, whether my interest wasn't there or not. But it explained what they're both about, but I don't think it was explained in a very good way. I can buy Tandy. Sorry to interrupt. I can buy Tandy. She's backed into a corner. She doesn't know she's got this thing. She's striking out of fear because I get that. That's like a superhero trait. Into a lot of them don't understand they've got powers until they're absolutely got nowhere else to turn. But this situation with Cloak, I'm thinking, I don't know. I didn't really buy that.
Yeah, there didn't seem to be a trigger, did there? He just sort of went to, other than putting the sheet over his head, he wasn't in a particularly stressful situation where his adrenaline was pumping and then the powers manifest themselves. I agree, and kind of in the comics he has this massive flowing cloak, and he can teleport himself, and other people kind of walk into his cloak, and they actually go through what's known as the dark dimension to get to wherever they need to be. Yeah. And this, I think after watching this first episode, I thought, okay, so this is 10 episodes. We're only going to see them be heroic in episode 10.
Yeah.
So I'm in for a long watch here. That's kind of what I was thinking, quite honestly, after the first one.
Yeah, because you always get I don't know, obviously, we've only watched 5 episodes, how the rest of it plays out at the moment, but you always get this misstep, don't you? Usually about 4 episodes in, they'll reveal themselves with a bit of the powers, and then something goes wrong and they end up hiding again and all that. And it's the same sort of format, isn't it, with these superhero TV shows and stuff. But that doesn't matter, and that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's a winning formula. I think if they're engaging as actors and the story's compelling, and I agree with you. I must admit, I think I messaged you after the first episode and was like, "Oh, thanks, Dave."
I think I said thanks, Twitter followers.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't said as nicely as that, Dave. But yeah, I think with both of us. But then it ends the first episode. We go into the second episode, and we get introduced to the detective Bridget O'Reilly. She's investigating Rick being stabbed, and he's obviously playing the victim and stuff, and it scares Tandy to the point where she just wants to leave, doesn't she? She wants to get out of town, sort of thing.
Yeah. And you can see from that perspective, and I don't think, I think the 2 lead characters or the 2 lead actors, I think they pull off I think they do a decent job, because when they're in peril, when they're when she's in the club, trying to pick up blokes and stuff to rob, I think it's quite convincing, but just I can't feel empathy for them.
Yeah,
that's what's wrong. I don't think it's anything to do with their acting ability. But yeah, at this point, you sort of see it from Tandy's perspective, and she's obviously a lot of the time she's on the wrong side of the law. You mentioned Robin Hood. Well, she robs from the rich to give to the poor. I guess herself being poor. So. I don't know. I just think I could see why she'd want to skip town. She doesn't want to end up on the wrong side of the law and slammed up, against this rich boy who's, probably got connections all through the police and everything. So I can understand the wanting to leave town there.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a bit of a problem with this next sort of section, Dave. Tyrone, he's basically obsessed with this cop killer who, I understand why, he's killed his brother and all that stuff, and he misses basketball, and he speaks to, we're getting introduced to Father Delgado properly, don't we? But why did they think it was common to his teammates beat him up, don't they? Because he didn't turn up to practice. Now, I'm not being funny, Dave, but I've missed plenty of football practices, and I'm sure you have. I've never known anybody want to give me a smack. It's
a bit harsh, isn't it? I mean, it's up there in the, this is media that's made in 2018. And when we watch back, 80s movies and 70s movies and whatever, there are some things in there where you look back now and you go, oh my God, things like Karate Kid.
Yeah,
it's just not really believable. And for me, this kind of thing was straight out of an 80s movie, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The coach is giving us a hard time. Let's beat him up. I don't know, maybe it is like that in basketball in the US, but it did seem a bit harsh.
Don't ever hit me if I miss any practice, any
recordings. Send the boys around to rough you up a bit. Proper Full Metal Jacket style.
Style. And like I say, it serves the plot. It serves the fact that, yes, he's got this sort of power, and this sort of, it's like a telepathy type thing or whatever he's got. But he has still got, he's not completely a, psycho, is he, and stuff like that. It's all about nurturing his powers now. And I think this is what I was getting at when I said about the TV stuff, Dave. What I've got a problem with is because of the cutthroat industry, and I mentioned it before, of the US TV shows, and the way they did it in Smallville at times was, it went on too long for him Clark to get with Lana and then get with Lois and stuff as he gets older in the series and that, and the character evolved. I don't think you've got the time to sit there and drag this whole character development out these days. I think you've got to pretty much get it boxed off within a few episodes and then work off other things that are going on in their lives and that to make it believable, and also to make you like selling a pitch really with these first series of these shows. And I was like, this is just the same sort of stuff I've seen over and over again at this point.
Yeah, and I think that, again, I think Freeform is just, it's a network, isn't it? And yes. So, in the last sort of 10 years, we've had a real switch in mindset for some of the TV shows, haven't we? Not, the thing that gets held up most is like Breaking Bad, where it's this decompressed storytelling, and you definitely get that in the comics as well, actually now. But I don't think the two things are related. But where it's not about one episode and getting bums on seats and TV switched on to see that. It's about that whole arc. And so I'm watching this thinking, well, okay, you can do this with Netflix, but it's taking a chance doing it on a network.
I agree. I totally agree. And don't get me wrong, Dave. You've got, they're not bad actors and actress and that. They're not at all. I just think it's the world isn't that believable. They're in that sort of sickly American high school type bubble at times where there's a few bad eggs, and obviously, you've got the mother of Tandy. She's not a nice person really, and you can see that there's any cash thrown her way, should sell her daughter out for the latest bit of drink or whatever. But and even the lawyer who's with her mum, he's not a gay bloke and stuff. He's just the typical cliche sleazy lawyer, isn't he? And all that. So you get all them dynamics. But I think it's hard sometimes. One of the examples, David, I know you've probably not seen it. Me and Sam are watching a program called SWAT at the moment on Sky Atlantic. And basically SWAT, it's totally off the subject, but it runs parallel to this, where it's a few episodes in, and the first 2 episodes, I was absolutely on board. Like, this is going to be brilliant. It's like a 24 type violence with, storytelling of whatever, but it's a really good TV show. And then we're about 6 episodes in, and it's the same stuff. And I've avoided the reviews on purpose. And last night I pushed the button on the reviews, and they were saying the same thing, saying it doesn't change. Every episode's exactly the same. Like it's like the A-Team, basically. Like a bit more violent A-Team. And this looks like at the moment, and I'm sorry to be so negative already into the review, but it's like they've just gone with the same format, even though they're totally different characters and they're supposed to have a bit more of a grounded, believable presence. And I think maybe with myself, Dave, and you know this privately, I've been watching Luke Cage 2, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. So I don't know whether because I'm watching both of them simultaneously, I'm finding more holes in this. That might be why. It might be my mistake with the series. But at the moment, like you said a few times with some of the reviews, it's not redeemable for me. I'm really, really struggling now. And that's about halfway through the second episode. I was thinking, oh my word. And again, I think it's an age thing, a generation thing. It just doesn't hit with me like it might have done maybe even 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think that certainly comes into it. But I have to say, my wife actually likes this. So, but I will say she likes stuff like Twilight, Mortal Instruments, stuff like that. These kind of films that are based on teen fiction. So I do think that's where it's going to resonate, is people who are into that stuff. But,
and also, Dave, as well, sorry.
Yeah.
Also, please, if you disagree with me or Dave or me together collectively, please tell us, because I'd love to have a discussion with people out there who've watched the show and try and explain to me, because maybe it's just me not getting the beat of what's going on, because I really don't get the idea or the concept behind it, or why you would want to produce 100 episodes at the moment.
Well, at this pace, I can tell why it needs to be 100 episodes. But I'm not confident they'll get there. But again, the reviews, the viewing figures, they all seem to disagree with us. So that's fine. This is all just our opinion, isn't it? So,
of course it is. This could be a solo type situation. We didn't like it, but everyone else seems to love it, didn't they, first?
Well, I'm not sure that. I think that was just reading a few wrong reviews. I think the consensus was it wasn't great. But anyway, I mean, finishing off with this second episode, you essentially get, after the whole basketball thing and what have you, Tyrone, his mum is obviously quite worried about him. And then you get to see a bit more of his powers, don't you? You get to see that if he makes contact with someone, he can actually see their greatest fears. And you can see that his mum is, really worried about losing him, in the same way that she lost Billy. And again, if you're watching this as a teen, or like us, you're watching it as parents, you probably see it from slightly different perspectives, don't you? I very much empathize with the mother there, so you'd do anything, especially if you had a traumatic event like that, that would be your greatest fear. And Tandy and her boyfriend, she's trying to rustle up enough cash to basically skip town. And she, again, it's this idea that they're just two sides of the same coin. So conveniently, and I don't think I've read all the Cloak and Dagger comics. I'm pretty sure this isn't a power in the comics, that she sees everyone's greatest hopes, and she sees that her boyfriend Liam, he just wants to settle down and get married to her.
Yeah.
And we've seen enough by this point from her character that she is a little bit messed up and dysfunctional, isn't she? She hasn't had the greatest upbringing. She's not a bad person, but her tendency is to sort of run away from that sort of commitment, and she's a little bit taken back by that.
And I think, to be fair, Dave, I think I can handle that and believe that. And to be fair, I think that's a nice little twist, that he's got the fears, she's got the hope. So, like you say, it's that double-sided coin. I think, double-sided coin, two sides to the same coin, whatever. But it's the same thing. They're embodiment together, aren't they? Hence why when they touched, they fell apart, didn't they, and stuff. And
I talked about Twilight, right? And there are very few movies that if I sit down and start, I'm quite a completionist. So if I sit down and start to watch it, I have to finish it. Yeah. Same with the series. When do you think I finished Iron Fist? So one of the very few movies, I can't remember which one of the Twilights it was, but I was watching it and they were having this baseball game or something, and the female character, the lead character, is it Kirsten Stewart or something?
Yeah.
She's turned into a vampire, and then there's this whole little show about her showing off her powers, and I'm just like, right, that's it, I'm done. This is utterly ridiculous.
That's the last film.
I hate it. Is it?
Yeah, it's the last one.
Oh, it's awful. And so this, it didn't hit it quite as badly as this for me, but just having those opposite powers, it was just too convenient. And again, just I guess because it doesn't come from the comics, they've just made it up to make it perfectly symmetrical. I just didn't buy it.
No.
But that's all I'll say on it, because that comes up again and again, doesn't it, through the series, her being able to see other people's greatest hopes.
Exactly, and then Tyrone, he gets the gun from Adina, and he confronts Connors, doesn't he? And he's about to basically shoot him. Connors is not too sure what's going on, and then just as he's about to shoot him, because he can't control how he teleports or how he does it, he then gets moved away, doesn't he, conveniently, and ends up in the middle of the road with Tandy driving away, and she has to swerve, doesn't she, from hitting him, basically. Yeah. That's like the end of the second episode. That's all I've got to say, basically.
Yeah. So again, if let me try and be forgiving and enthusiastic about this. So you can see, can't you, he hasn't got control of his powers, but their paths are now intertwined. They're two sides of the same coin, but he'll teleport, and he's drawn to her, since that initial contact. So that's again why it's a rather inconvenient moment, isn't it? But that's kind of why he appears there, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And then we go into like the third episode, and there's a bit more meat on the bones in this one, I must admit. O'Reilly's now, she's at the point where she realizes that this Rick was, stabbed because he was, trying to rape Tandy. Tandy's still all over the place with what's going on in her head, what she can see, and she's struggling to recover from the crash with Tyrone. As she gets home, she's covered in blood. She's wiping the blood from like her head. And her mum and her boyfriend are obviously asleep because they've drunk or whatever. And then her mum comes into the bathroom and she says to her, like, are you all right? But she's like covered her hair at that point over where she smacked her head in the car. But then her mum sees all the blood on the towel. So as it kicks off with her mum, she's like, "I've not seen you for weeks," or whatever. She's getting a knock at the door, and it's O'Reilly at the door looking for Tandy. You know, her mum starts speaking to her, and her mum covers for her, doesn't she? And so she can get away quickly. But then Tandy ends up on a bus, and she sort of knocks. She's unconscious still from the crash because, she's concussed. Sorry, and ends up being unconscious on the bus. But she sees like a vision then, doesn't she? Oh no, that's a bit further on, isn't it? So I was going to say, sorry, at the same time as this, Tyrone is with this girl, Evita, who's a bit like his girlfriend, who conveniently takes into a voodoo priestess, Auntie Chantel. Obviously, I've got plenty of voodoo aunties, Dave, around the Stratford area, but it seemed to move the story along, shall we say.
Well, I think this again, if you're going to put it in New Orleans, why not take advantage of the environment and don't make it some generic story that you could pick up and drop down anywhere, kind of intertwine with the environment. So I was all right with all of this voodoo stuff.
Yeah, very much Live and Let Die, Dave. That was all New Orleans and that, James Bond. But
so I'll just say one of the movies we've reviewed, I'm sure Blade is supposed to be in New Orleans.
Yes, it is, yes.
It's clearly not, is it? So,
no.
At least these guys reference and the environment and whatever. So, yeah, I quite like them doing that. If you're going to move it, and acknowledge that it's moved.
And I think as well, I'll take a step back from this and try not to be so critical. I'm raving about Smallville, which is, a character who's an alien from another planet. And then I'm moaning about a voodoo, which is still a practice of religion that is sort of practiced in it on this world. So I'm sort of not believing this, but I'm quite happy to believe that a man can, go faster than a speeding bullet and stuff. So I suppose I need to take a bit of a step back. It might just be my prejudice against the characters because I've never heard of them, or you know what I mean? There's no backstory for me to go into, which doesn't always, like with the Daredevil stuff. I knew Daredevil was, but I was never into Daredevil.
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot of exposure, was there? But then when, the Ben Affleck stuff and that, but once it came in, I was absolutely on board with the whole Defenders stuff and that. Whereas this, it could just be me, Dave. It could just be me being totally overcritical because it's more of a teen type TV show. But yeah, you get this section then where obviously he sees the voodoo priestess, and then Tandy and Tyrone have a bit of a surreal vision, don't they? And she can see that he's trying to get revenge against Connors. Tyrone's trying to top it up and running away because she's running away from a problem. So it's very teen drama type situation, isn't it? Obviously, he's trying to do over a copper, but she's very much running from her fears and everything. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's a bad thing. And I think, to be fair, if you'd had this maybe in the first episode, it might have been a bit more believable. Get all this sort of stuff out of the way, build the characters a bit better. I think I can never tell with these shows how they're going to go. They either start slowly or they start like a bat out of hell and then peter off. So I don't know. Maybe this is going to be a slow burner, Dave. I will have to watch the next 5 episodes, irrespective of the review, just to see if I'm being a bit harsh.
So yeah, I guess at this point, they have this vision, like you say, and again, their paths are intertwined, and you can see they're looking to help each other. Not even really sure why, I don't think, but in parallel to that, what you have is the police officer, so O'Reilly. She's putting together all the pieces, isn't she? So when she's interviewing the bloke and she's saying, well, when you were found stabbed, your pants were undone. Or your as the Americans would say, your pants. Your trousers in the UK, your pants would be your underpants there. So, she's joined the dots, and, she thinks that Tandy's stabbed him in self-defense. And so, she does catch up with her and, explains to Tandy, look, I kind of know what's going on here, and you've got nothing to worry about. But essentially, I can't remember for what reason, but Connors has already closed the case.
That's a good question.
Why did he close it? So after that, Tyrone basically follows Tandy to the abandoned church. So he basically sees that actually this girl whose path I seem to be intertwined with, she's effectively homeless. Quite a nice big church though. She's got plenty of room to put furniture in, just spruce the place up a bit. So it's not terrible there.
No, it wasn't bad at all, actually, Dave. And I think this is quite nice. I think this should have happened in the first 2 episodes again, as I referenced a minute ago, because they're getting that relationship. They know there's a connection now, don't they? I think there's been maybe an episode and a half of nonsense that didn't need to be there, and this is where the nitty gritty of what they're about, I think, is starting to unravel. So some of it works, some of it doesn't. I just don't think there was too much emphasis on the high school stuff. I know we haven't really touched on it, but there's a lot of stuff that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't really move the plot forward. It doesn't explain anything, does it? I think it's trying to show that he's a normal kid, with especially Tyrone, and he's got a crush on this Evita, Annie, and stuff. So you kind of get this, but you can tell that when he's with Tandy, there is a connection with them both. They seem to really empathize and talk quite well together, don't they? Like they've known each other for years, which is quite interesting.
And again, that's why I kind of think that the actors, I think, they must be doing something right, because you do feel that chemistry.
Yeah.
You know, and we've talked about it with other movies, haven't we? With like Christian Bale and Katie Holmes on screen. There's just zero chemistry there. Whereas with these two, you do feel there's an actual chemistry there.
And I think and you're totally right. And I think as well, he's going back to something I said in one of the other reviews, was when we did Constantine, was the Rachel Weisz and Keanu Reeves. There was no chemistry. I said she was a good foil. I remember you saying, yeah, but there's no chemistry, and there isn't. And the Christian Bale one, as I mentioned in the review, was the reason that him and Katie Holmes were destined to be together in the Batman stuff or have some sort of relationships, because there was so much like a brother and sister relationship. There was just nothing there. So that's why they had that misdirection in the Dark Knight. So I think with this, really, really well acted and believable that there is something there. And that takes a lot in this day and age to make it believable in these sort of films. So no, I'd fair play to both of them, Dave. Very good. The very good actor and actress, without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we'll see him in other stuff in years to come, better stuff as well and bigger stuff.
I think so. I think they do have talent. And I think at this point, certainly, you know, I kind of like the Tyrone character. You know, certainly if it was a choice between the two, you know, I think he's I can kind of empathize with him and where he's coming from.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And then obviously this is the end of the 3rd episode now, so we've got this connection. It goes off, and then we start with the 4th episode's called Call Response, isn't it? So you've got like Tyrone and Tandy talking about the personal lives, their issues, the visions they've seen of each other. This all unravels, and then we get a bit of a weird section where Tyrone decides to sort of falsify his stolen bike, doesn't he, to get near Connors. And he uses like this guy Otis, who he's met a couple of times. He's been with, and he's bolt cutters. But just as the last minute, Tyrone does a runner out of the police station, doesn't he, in fear.
Yeah.
And I like that, because it's not just a case of a revenge mission where he's gone in and just took this guy out. He's absolutely, he's still a kid. And I think that's where it comes across quite well in this episode, that he is a kid. I think it's very well acted, to be fair.
Yeah, and he's just bottled it, hasn't he? He had these ideas, and then it's like, oh no, I'm in over my head here. So yeah, I like that bit as well.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And Otis, obviously, he realises that Tyrone stole the bolt cutters, and he's worried that he's going to become a bit of a petty thief and a criminal and stuff, and sees a direction. So he takes him to this guy, the big chief, Roland Duplantier, is it?
Yeah, well, I guess again, you know, you see, I'm just trying to very quickly check. So, I mean, that's his dad, isn't it, Otis?
Yeah.
So, you know, as a father, and again, having fortunately not been through the kind of traumatic event that father character's been through, you can see as soon as your son that's left on this planet, you know, if he starts to veer off, you need to do something straight away. So I'm empathizing with the dad at this point. You know, he's sort of like, just, you know, put your arm around him and try and show him a different path.
Yeah, obviously. And then we get a nice little section, because we know like this Greg, who's with her mum, Melissa, is a sleazeball lawyer, isn't he? But there's a bit of a connection with Tandy where she realises he has got her mum's best interest at heart. And obviously he's researching Roxxon, which obviously created the whole incident with her and Tyrone.
I think it was a nice misdirection because, again, if you've watched things like 8 Mile,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking. 8 Mile when I was thinking of this, and you've used the word sleazeball there. That's exactly what I thought it was. And then, but he kind of, even when Bridget came to the house, he stuck up for her there. And in this episode, you see actually, he's not a sleazeball. He does seem an okay bloke, and so Tandy starts to warm to him, doesn't she? And
Yeah.
Again, it probably doesn't help how dysfunctional she is, but no sooner as she warmed to him and could actually entertain the idea of quite liking this bloke as a kind of stepdad figure. He has his brains blown out and essentially assassinated, and it's like, oh, come on. So I wasn't fully expecting that. I thought they were going to explain that or explore that kind of that dynamic a little bit more, but yeah, I thought that was kind of shocking.
Yeah, and obviously we're getting undertones that he's getting a bit too close to this Roxxon, isn't he? So
yeah,
it's obviously the reason he has been killed. But I thought, like you said, I thought he was going to become a bit of a redeemable character, Dave, a bit of a good guy. But as we know with these sort of things, you can only have two. You can't have too many leading actors and actresses, can you? So because otherwise you've got stories going off and tangents. But no, it's a shame really, because it could have been quite a good dynamic her having that backup, I think, because she obviously can't rely on her mum. So he was just a bit too erratic in life in general. But again, she's a good actress, the mother.
Yeah.
Because you're believable. You believe that she's a bit of a, drunk, deadbeat, down on her luck, probably depressed, stuff like that.
Yeah, she's got her issues, hasn't she? For sure. But I mean, for the story, though, it does move it in the direction that it needs to go, doesn't it? So, at this point, she's had all these sort of terrible things in the early episodes, Tandy, and so she just decides, she's had enough. So she's gonna end it all, and then that's at the moment where you get, so she does actually jump off into the water, and under that moment of stress, she kind of has an epiphany, and it's like, oh no, I actually quite like living. And manages to use her powers to get out there.
Yeah. And obviously, Tyrone ends up back at the police station asking for O'Reilly now, doesn't he? And then Tandy goes back to the office and takes the Roxanne files as evidence to clear Nathan's name as the episode comes out. And again...
So Nathan being Tandy's dad.
Yeah. I just keep saying these names, Dave.
Yeah.
As you can tell.
But let's just take a moment there. So when we were talking before we went into the recap review, we talked about nods to the rest of the Marvel universe, and for me this didn't really feel connected. But Roxxon is a reoccurring big corporation. It could really be any big faceless corporation, couldn't it? But Roxxon's been in lots of stuff. The one that springs to mind initially is Iron Man 3, where it's one of the head chaps from Roxxon that the Mandarin pretends he's shot.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so that was one of those chaps, and again they've appeared in other series, but I can't remember what he says. It's not "You'll never see me coming," something like that. But no, it's So I think that is when they're talking about subtle nods to the rest of that connected world. For me, this is the only one I really spotted. There may be others, but not many really.
No, and I didn't know. I didn't see that, and obviously I've seen the film, so yeah. I don't even. Sometimes you can remember the name of these things, can't you? Go, oh, I ever seen that? And then you go on Google, but I didn't even. I just thought I was made up for this series. So yeah, good spot, Dave.
Well, I mean, Roxxon stands out because again, it's reoccurring in the comics, and if you just think Exxon, I don't know whether it was directly influenced in terms of the name, but big, huge corporation. I don't think it's a mistake.
No, exactly. And then obviously we're getting into episode 5 now. That's called Princeton Offense. O'Reilly agrees to investigate Connors now, as long as, Tyrone stays away, understands there's something going on there, with his brother and everything, because he's a dodgy cop. He plays a good part as well, this Connors guy, don't he, the actor, because he is just a slimy copper. And these series, they've always got to have a bent copper, haven't they, Dave? No matter what, there's always someone who's on the take. And this is just Connors through and through. And
so he's the guy who shot Billy, isn't he?
Billy,
that's why she's trying to stop Tyrone from doing something silly, but
yes.
It's not just that one event as well. He's, like you say, he's clearly a bent copper.
Yeah, exactly. And then Tyrone goes to meet one of his brothers, his deceased brother Billy's friend, Dwayne Porter, hoping he's going to help tell him something about the investigation or something that it'll help him sort of get Connors and stuff, doesn't he? And then we flick to Tandy then. She's applied as an intern at Engulf to get close to all the execs and see what's going on, and sees if she can sort of overthrow the CEO, which is quite an ambitious thing for an intern, Dave, I must admit.
Again, from a story perspective, I kind of like this bit because, it's her. She's seen that her stepdad's been assassinated. She's gone to take her own life, but then thought, no, there's more to live for this, and no, I'm gonna find out what's actually happened. And so you have to start somewhere, don't you? So getting an entry-level position, we've seen right from the first episode that she can convince people of a reality, so she's a bit of a con artist. So yeah, I thought that was okay. But of course, in the meantime, you've got Tyrone playing a basketball tournament, and then at half time, accidentally teleports to exactly where she is at this Roxxon party, which is, again, a little bit inconvenient. And you can kind of see at this point, Tyrone's like, oh, come on. I've had enough of this now. What divine spirit is kind of pulling me back to this annoying runaway,
Yeah, I agree. And I think that was quite a nice little touch, Dave, as well. And it's also showing that he's quite naive and new to his powers, so he's still not got them under control. But what a time to do a runner, basically. But he ends up sort of coming back just before the game, doesn't he? He teleports back, but as he's playing, you can see something's not right, because he's hitting 3-pointers, he's scoring, he's playing quite well, he plays a free ball as well, gets a point, but then he realizes that one of his opponents, his greatest fear, is losing the game.
Mm-hmm.
So he throws the game, basically, doesn't he, to appease his opponent, which is a part of a character flaw, I suppose, because he can see into the fears of other people. But that would be a natural fear for anybody, wouldn't it? Losing a game if you're in that sort of arena.
Yeah, but it was pretty graphic. Graphic's not the right word, but you can imagine it'd be pretty traumatic. It wasn't just like, a game of 5-a-side.
No,
you're going to lose. You're going to lose. He really was fearful of seemed to be fearful of the coach, didn't he? If they lost the game. So again, kind of liking the Tyrone character at this point, and he makes that hero's choice to say, you know what, it's a game. Yeah. This clearly means a lot more to him than it does to me. So
yeah,
I'm gonna miss the point. I do think he should have probably gone round his own team and done the same, because he might have thought, he might have, clipped someone else and realised, well, actually, when they get home, they're going to get beaten up, for not winning. So, he only had the perspective, this greatest fear of this one chap. So, again, the story needs us to believe, well, okay, he's done the hero's thing there, but he doesn't know what the rest of his team are like.
No. And I suppose maybe it picks up, I don't know, the only thing I could think of, he picks up on the person who's got the worst thing to lose or something, or most to lose in these situations. I don't know whether that's what they're trying to depict with his powers. I don't know, like a Spidey sense type situation. It's convenient that it was his main opponent, but yeah, not strange, but it was unpredictable, because I thought he was going to win the game. basically.
Yeah,
especially the way
and
he started.
let's go with that. Let's go that his powers were drawn to the person because so let's explore that actually because that person was a tool in the first
Yeah.
half, wasn't he? And
Yes.
Tyrone's thinking, and you can see it from Tyrone's perspective. He's like, why is this guy such an absolute, fool?
Yeah.
Well, tool, let's say that. And so, now I've seen his greatest fear. I know that's driving his behavior.
Yeah.
So I think there's a nice, I can get behind that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And then obviously O'Reilly's now well into with the game finishes. Oh, sorry, that's it. Sorry, Tandy then meets Scarborough, doesn't she? And uses her powers to see the guy's greed and everything.
Yeah, and it's kind of a horrible scene. This so his normally when she's seen people's hopes, she saw like her boyfriends, and it's just a nice, lovely, bright wedding, and this guy, is wading through piles of bodies, fishing out money, and it's like, oh crikey,
Yeah.
So yeah, he's obviously not a very redeemable, nice chap, is he? So we obviously know, well, we don't care if something bad happens to him because he's not a very nice person.
No, not at all. And then O'Reilly, as we said before, O'Reilly then gets close to Connors by pretending that, that basically she's a bit of a taking a backhand, isn't she? She's a bit loose with the law type situation, trying to get his sort of confidence and trust.
Yeah.
So get the information out of him of what he's actually doing, because we've seen already he's up to all sorts. This guy, the little segments he's been in, there's always something going on behind everyone's backs, and he's got an underbelly and a sort of connection to the underworld and stuff. So it's the sort of thing you've seen in other series and stuff. But I think, to be fair, it's quite a strong episode, this one. The fourth and fifth episodes are my favourite ones, if I'm being honest. I thought there was some good acting in these last two episodes.
Yeah, it picks up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Again, I kind of feel like episodes 1 to 3 should have been minimum 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Could have possibly got most of it into one. And then I think the pace would have it would have grabbed us quicker, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
But yeah, so I think at this point as well, so O'Reilly's, like you say, she's got the measure of Connors. She just has to get some proof, that he's up to no good. But I think the other kind of thing that happens here is obviously Tyrone finds out his mate Dwayne, who was there when his brother Billy was shot, doesn't quite have the same values as he does, and so he's working with Connors, to basically dole out the drugs. And even though he knows this copper shot my best mate, and so again, to a young kid, you're sort of thinking, well, how can that possibly be?
Yeah.
You must be a terrible, terrible person. And I don't know. This did make me think, and again, I think the world that this is, you just think it's not necessarily, do we think that Dwayne is a terrible person for doing that? Or do we think he's just faced with a quite terrible choice?
Yeah.
Does he try and jump on his white horse and be a vigilante? Or is he just going to get crushed by the system?
Yeah.
Not to take this little teeny TV show and get it too realistic, but it did make me think, I'm sure there's lots of people in the world who have to make terrible choices like this.
Yeah, I think as well, it's a good little misstep as well, misdirection as well, because I couldn't say I saw it coming, but it wasn't when it all unraveled, you were like, yeah, fair enough. You can see that. And also it gives Tyrone a bit more of a focus, doesn't it, to get these Connors even more, because he's corrupted this Dwayne, whether he's corrupted him and Dwayne knew and kept his mouth shut, or he was in on the fact that they were going to kill Billy. I don't know, but it's a nice little subplot to the Connors character as well.
Yeah. Because again, it's a little bit more depth than, there's goodies and there's baddies.
Exactly.
It's a little bit Game of Thrones-ish, isn't there? There's just lots of grey and in between bits.
Yeah, and that's good. That's good. It builds that character development as well, doesn't it, around the show, and Tyrone's development as well. But then obviously Tandy then meets Mina Hess, who's the daughter of Nathan's colleague, Ivan. And this is the end of the 5th episode by now, Dave, as well.
Yeah, and again, you kind of see. Do you notice actually with a lot of the comic characters, there's an investigative side to them. So as well as their visual powers, that they have, whatever it is, these wondrous things that they can do, a lot of them are detectives as well.
Yeah.
So, she's following the investigation and helping us, the audience, go from one step to the other. So yeah, and that will lead on to the 6th episode, where she'll explore that a little bit more and join the breadcrumbs up there. But like you said before, so we just said we'd review these first 5 episodes for this show, and then figure out, if we're going to review the second 5 at a later date. Shall we go into our final scores?
All I've got to say is I think it's me first today, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct?
Which one did we do? We did episode 30, Ant-Man and the Wasp. No idea. I think I volunteered you last week.
Oh, did you? Oh, right. Okay.
I think so. I think we were, because I'm sure I said, I don't know either, but I'll volunteer you. That's in my mind at the moment. So I think it's me this week. So just before I go into that final review then, so again, a thank you to our sponsor, Sudio. You can go and get them at sudio.com. Check out some really cool, really stylish looking and robust wireless headphones. So if you want to buy something at the checkout, put in Comics in Motion Podcast 15, that's 15, and that'll give you an extra 15% off as well. And just to call out again to our competition, if you want a free pair, then you have to get across into iTunes and give us a 5-star review there, and we'll pick a winner at random for our UK listeners. At some point in the future, we will there's possibly like a digital type competition we could do for our global listeners, because we have them scattered about everywhere. But I'm afraid this one's just, we can only post to the UK. So, final review time. So I was really looking forward to this series, and I think we've been spoiled, haven't we, with the Netflix, well, some of the Netflix stuff. I actually quite, not to tip my hat too much, I had watched Runaways. I really liked that. Cloak and Dagger, I was a little bit surprised this was commissioned, actually, so close to Runaways, because it's such a similar idea. But the fact that as a young kid these resonated with me, I like them. I was kind of on that journey, almost at exactly the right time when these characters were being created. These were new characters, fresh characters for me, and so I was really looking forward to it. And, I watched the first episode, and it's, we're kind of used to this decompressed storytelling, aren't we now? So I was like, okay, they've changed some stuff around. Nothing really grabs me. The only things that grab me are to notice, oh, that's different and that's different, but it didn't really pull me into the story. I felt it just plodded along a little bit too much. And again, I make excuses for it that, we're a couple of older gentlemen, and maybe this is just pitched and intended to be for people who are a lot younger than us and kind of angsty teen kind of ages, or people who are at least mentally like that. So for me, I am going to send this one to Hell's Kitchen. There are a few little things that, we've talked about, I kind of liked a little bit of this and what they did there with the story, but I found it hard work, and this felt like hard work to me. And I say that even more so than probably something like Generation X. Now, in terms of quality, this is obviously, way above that. But just in terms of, we've got to get through this one, and I don't really care. Again, it's not a particularly high Hell's Kitchen as well. I did toy with the idea of sending it off into the Phantom Zone, but for me, there's just enough to to keep it out of there for me.
I think obviously anyone who's listened to this review today, it's not been negative, but I just think we're probably a generation too far getting into something like this, or I personally feel like that. I can buy any story, Dave, anything, and within the MCU, I can pretty much get on board with. But I felt a bit out of place watching this, and there was some bits were quite uncomfortable to watch. And again, like you said, maybe it's because parent or whatever. And I don't feel old. I'm not even 40 yet, so it's not like we're not on the scrap heap, either of us. But it just felt too much for me. I bought into Cloak more than I did Dagger, but she's a good actress, Dagger, as well. I don't know. I think I wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in the story. I wasn't interested in what was going on. If what I was trying to, I think, say earlier on is if they're going to go for 100 episodes, my word, they're going to have to pull something else out the bag, because from what I've seen at these 5 episodes, these probably 1.5 episodes are brilliant, and that's only on episode 4 and 5. It is wrong for us to. We're not obviously reviewing the whole series. We're only reviewing half a series. And I would love people to watch it and come back to us and tell us what they think of it, whether we were wrong and whether I need to go and watch the rest of the series, from my point of view anyway. But again, I just didn't care enough, Dave. I didn't care enough. I thought, I've seen this before. It's very much, it felt like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, all these other sort of watered down type teen shows. Yes, we've got in Buffy that you had the vampires and things like that, but you've always got these little subplots. Smallville was like that. Like I say, I love that series, but there was always at least 2 or 3 of a series that were just filler episodes. And I must admit, for the first 3 episodes, they just felt like they were filling it out. Like you said, I think we could have condensed the story into 1 episode and then run with the investigative stuff of them both being together as a team, or colliding, or whatever they were going to do, running parallel, and then they get together. It just felt there was a lot of stuff didn't need to be there. We know that they're both at high school and all that sort of thing. We didn't need all that other stuff that was around it, the drama and the love interest stuff. Just get to the. For me personally, I wouldn't have had a problem with any of it if they just got to the point, I think. And pretty much what people are thinking now as I'm talking. But
yeah.
for that reason, I'm going to give it the same. Hell's Kitchen, Dave.
Oh, right. Okay. I thought you were going to send it to the Phantom Zone.
No, it's not that bad, I must admit.
Okay. So it's not quite weird science then.
For what it's portrayed as, it's more serious than anything else. And it's neither any of them, really, I think. It's just there. It's just a show that if you've got a few hours to spare, it's not going to boggle your mind. It's not going to throw something in there that you've not seen before if you've watched this sort of genre that we review every week. So, yeah, it's not bad and it's not good. So, I mean, maybe it should be in the middle, but I don't think it's good enough to be in the middle. I don't think it is holds of justice.
Yeah, no, I agree. For me, that's where I put it as well. And so, very good, very good. We're going to have to disagree on more, I think. There's got to be something we find where, I send it to Asgard and you send it to
the Phantom Zone
or something.
I think so. Well, as I said to you, there's a couple of things I'm watching at the moment. I think you've questioned when we talk privately. So I'd be quite interesting to see your thoughts on that and later reviews if that comes up, because I've quite enjoyed what I've been watching recently. So
yeah,
that'd be interesting.
Very good. So, Chris, do you have any plugs for us?
I do, Dave, actually. The Chat Footy podcast, 2nd episode went live on Sunday. Myself, Ben, and Ryan from the Friend Zone podcast came on. Obviously, you'll be back on this week, Dave, and we just talk about the football stuff and the Premiership. So you can get hold of us at Chat Footy on Twitter and Chat Footy podcast on iTunes, Podbean, and all other podcast hosting sites. And then there was what can I be described as a Superman in Justice League like revival of the Contextual podcast, which is my podcast. Didn't think much of it, but got great numbers this week. So we're going to make that maybe a bi-weekly type show. We're talking gaming and stuff. And you can get hold of me at Chris Phelps78 on Twitter or on iTunes, Podbean, all the other podcast hosting sites at the Contextual podcast. So yeah, good stuff.
I think it was a Superman 2 moment, wasn't it? It was beaten up in the diner, covered in blood, wandering up the highway in the snow, and then just pulling out that green crystal and springing back into life.
and I'm happy to admit this. Me and you spoke privately about this. It's a podcast I born last year. And I'd already done a podcast on fitness, and that was my gaming one. It's more of a real me. There's a lot of swearing. There's a lot of like cussing, and you know, we flip from one thing to another. When you've been on yourself as a guest, and it didn't think they had, because I needed someone to play off, and they had some guests on, and it went crazy. The numbers went through the roof, which was just unbelievable. So I don't think I can throw it on the scrap heap just yet, Dave. I think it's given me a bit more of a zest. So
yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, and continuing the soccer theme, so football scene. If you're interested in youth coaching, then get yourself across to the Grassroots Coachcast. Again, that we're approaching the new season, so Ben and I have been taking a break for the last month. We'll start that up again very soon.
Now, Dave, it's the end of the show. Big thanks to Studio again. As we've said before, get following them guys, get on the website, and that our sponsor for today's episode. It's been a hard slog, this one, Dave. It really has. And we know next week is going to be a good episode. What have you got for me to lead us out?
Well, given that we both didn't really enjoy this, I would say let's make like a shepherd and get the flock out of here.
Lethal Weapon, Martin Riggs. Nice, Dave. Nice.
Did they say that in Lethal Weapon?
He actually says when he's getting electrocuted by the Chinese guy, he comes out of the room and he shoots everyone. And he says to him, Murtaugh's all tied up with the old ex. This one, as you know, Dave, it's my first ever film I bought on video, and I was only about 10. And then my dad bought it, he was an 18. And he actually says, what did one shepherd say to the other shepherd? And Murtaugh goes, what? And he goes, let's get the flock out of here. So something along them lines. But yeah, it always reminds me of Lethal Weapon.
You're kind of verbosely ruining my snappy outro.
Chris, shut up. Yeah.
I was thinking, right, and at that point the music kicks in.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. All right, take care, everyone.
Bye now.
I'm afraid even if you do everything perfectly, I'm gonna lose.
What's your name?
Tandy. And his name was...
Yeah, Tyrone.
But are you that kid?